Clara's hand trembled as she signed the final wire transfer, her fortune bleeding away into an account she trusted more than her own heartbeat. "This is us against the world, mi amor," Francesca whispered, her lips brushing Clara's ear like a promise etched in smoke. But in that Barcelona penthouse, as the city lights flickered on below, Clara never saw the shadow slipping through the cracks of their perfect life. The rain-slicked streets of Madrid gleamed under sodium lamps, and Clara Vargas, heir to a Silicon Valley empire built on renewable energy patents, ducked into a dimly lit tapas bar to escape the downpour. She was 32 then, fresh off a brutal boardroom coup back home in San Francisco, her green eyes shadowed by jet lag and the kind of exhaustion that money couldn't buy. Spain had been her reset button, a sabbatical disguised as a business expansion into European solar markets. But resets, Clara knew, were for computers, not for women who'd buried their ambitions under layers of corporate armor. She ordered a vermouth neat, the bartender sliding it over with a nod that said he'd seen 1,000 lost souls like hers. That's when Francesca Ruiz entered, shaking rain from her dark curls like a storm goddess claiming her due. Francesca was 29, a painter from Seville with hands stained by ochre and cobalt, her olive skin glowing under the bar's amber haze. She wore a threadbare denim jacket over a silk slip dress that hugged her curves like it was painted on, and her laugh, God, that laugh, cut through the murmur of locals like a jazz riff in a flamenco hall. Their eyes met over the rim of Clara's glass. Francesca slid onto the stool beside her, uninvited but inevitable. "You look like you need saving from yourself," she said, her English laced with an Andalusian lilt that made Clara's pulse stutter. No hello, no small talk, just that bold hook, reeling her in. Clara arched a brow, her American directness kicking in. "And you look like trouble wrapped in a smile. What's your angle?" Francesca leaned in, close enough for Clara to catch the scent of jasmine and wet earth. "No angle. Just a canvas waiting for color. I'm Francesca." "You?" "Clara." She extended a hand, manicured but calloused from years of prototyping solar panels in garages turned labs. Their palms met, and something electric sparked, not the kind from her company's inverters, but deeper, rawer. Like the first crack in a dam. They talked until the bar emptied, the rain easing to a drizzle outside. Francesca spun tales of her nomadic life, sketching bullfighters in Ronde at dawn, hitchhiking through the Pyrenees with nothing but a sketchpad and spite for her conservative family back in Seville. She was fire and freedom, everything Clara had wired herself out of being. Clara, in turn, shared snippets of her world, the thrill of closing a deal that powered 1,000,000 homes, the loneliness of boardrooms where she was the only woman, the only queer voice shouting into the void. By midnight, they were stumbling arm in arm toward Clara's rented apartment in Salamanca, the city's golden age facades blurring into a haze of possibility. At the door, Francesca paused, her fingers tracing the line of Clara's jaw. "This could be a mistake," she murmured, eyes dark as the Guadalquivir at night. Clara pulled her closer, heart hammering. "Or it could be the best one yet." Their first kiss tasted of vermouth and rain, urgent and unpracticed, like two women who'd waited lifetimes for this collision. Inside, under the glow of a single lamp, they shed their defenses, jackets, doubts, the weight of worlds apart. It wasn't fireworks, it was a slow burn, hands exploring with the reverence of artists unveiling a masterpiece. Clara's fingers tangled in Francesca's hair, pulling her down onto the bed, their breaths mingling in whispers of names that felt like prayers. In the morning, sunlight slanted through the shutters, painting Francesca's sleeping form in gold. Clara watched her, chest tight with a fear she couldn't name. Love at first sight was for rom-coms, not for pragmatic tech heiresses who'd built empires on data, not destiny. But as Francesca stirred, murmuring "Buenos dias, amor," with a sleepy smile, Clara wondered if data had ever lied to her like this feeling didn't. Weeks blurred into a fever dream. Clara extended her stay, her assistant back in the Bay Area handling the fallout from delayed mergers. She and Francesca wandered Madrid's labyrinthine alleys, stealing bites of churros dusted with sugar, their laughter echoing off Moorish arches. One afternoon, in the Retiro Park, under a canopy of horse chestnuts shedding autumn leaves, Francesca pulled out her sketchpad. Sit, she commanded, her voice playful but firm. Clara obliged, perching on a wrought iron bench by the crystal palace, the glass dome shimmering like a mirage. Francesca's charcoal flew across the page, capturing Clara's profile, the sharp line of her nose inherited from her Mexican grandmother, the stubborn set of her chin that had stared down venture capitalists. "You're beautiful when you're unguarded," Francesca said later, showing her the drawing. It was raw, alive, Clara's eyes holding secrets she hadn't voiced yet. "And you're dangerous," Clara replied, kissing the smudge of charcoal on Francesca's thumb. "You see too much." That night, over paella in a hidden Gran Via bistro, Francesca opened up about her dreams. "I want a gallery in Barcelona. My own show. But Seville. They clip wings there. My family's all tradition, flamenco, fiestas, forgetting who you really are." Her voice cracked on the last word, and Clara reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Tell me." Francesca's eyes glistened. "I'm not what they wanted. A daughter with paint under her nails instead of a ring on her finger. And loving women. That's the devil's brushstroke in their eyes." She laughed bitterly, but Clara saw the fracture, the girl who'd fled south to chase authenticity, only to find it slipping like wet clay. Clara's throat tightened. She'd come out at 18, during a family dinner in Palo Alto where her father's solar firm was just a startup dream. Her mother had hugged her first, whispering, "Be brave, Mija." Her father had nodded, ever the engineer, "Love's just another variable. Solve for happiness." But boardrooms weren't so forgiving, whispers of a diversity hire followed her promotions like exhaust fumes. "I get it," Clara said softly. "More than you know. But here. With me. You can be everything." Francesca's gaze softened, and in that moment, over saffron-scented rice, something solidified between them. Not just attraction, a tether, fragile but fierce. As November chilled the air, Clara's world expanded to include Francesca's chaos. They drove south to Seville in Clara's rented Audi, the highway unspooling like a ribbon through olive groves and cork forests. Francesca pointed out landmarks with the fervor of a tour guide in love, the Alcazar's tiled patios, where Moorish queens once plotted empires, the Triana neighborhood, alive with guitar strings and the sizzle of espeto fish. But cracks appeared, subtle as hairlines in porcelain. At a family dinner in Francesca's childhood home, a whitewashed casa with geranium pots overflowing the balconies, her mother, Elena, eyed Clara with polite suspicion. "An American businesswoman," she said, pouring sherry with hands that had sewn sequins onto flamenco dresses for decades. "How enterprising." Clara smiled through the undercurrent, regaling them with tales of wind farms off the California coast. Francesca's father, a retired mechanic with grease-etched palms, grunted approval. But later, in the guest room, Francesca confessed, "They see you as a phase. A rich distraction before I settle." Clara pulled her close, their bodies fitting like puzzle pieces worn smooth by time. "Then we'll show them. Marry ambition with art." Francesca laughed, but her eyes held a shadow. "You say that like it's simple." It wasn't. Back in Madrid, Clara's phone buzzed with urgent emails, investors pulling back on an Iberian solar grid project, citing instability. She pored over spreadsheets late into the night, her laptop's glow casting Francesca's sleeping face in blue. One evening, bleary-eyed, she found Francesca at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of unpaid bills, rent for her tiny Malasana studio, supplies from a supplier in Valencia who'd hiked prices. "Let me help," Clara said, sliding into the chair beside her. Francesca hesitated, pride flickering. "I don't want your money, Clara. I want us to be equals." But equality in love, Clara was learning, was a myth when one partner's net worth could buy cities. Still, she wired a discreet sum for the studio lease, framing it as an investment in genius. Francesca accepted, tears in her eyes, and that night they made love with a gratitude that bordered on desperation, slow, deliberate, as if mapping each other's scars. By Christmas, they were inseparable. Clara hosted a small holiday party in her Salamanca flat, decking it with fairy lights and a tree shipped from a Madrid nursery. Friends from Clara's expat circle mingled with Francesca's bohemian crew, curators in tweed, poets with ink-stained fingers. Amid mulled wine and Mariah Carey crooning from the speakers, Clara pulled Francesca onto the balcony, the city a carpet of twinkling lights below. "Ask me anything," Clara said, her breath fogging the chill air. Francesca tilted her head, curls framing her face like a halo. "Why me? You could have anyone, models, moguls." Clara cupped her cheek, thumb tracing the curve of her lip. "Because you remind me what it's like to feel. Not calculate. Not conquer. Just be." They kissed then, the world narrowing to the press of mouths and the distant toll of midnight bells. It was the kind of moment that poets chase, the kind that makes cynics believe. But as the new year dawned, whispers of opportunity stirred. Francesca's work caught the eye of a Barcelona gallerist during a pop-up show in Lavapiés. "Come north," the woman urged, a silver-haired Catalan with a voice like gravel and gin. "Your pieces scream authenticity. We could launch you." Clara saw the spark reignite in Francesca's eyes, the hunger for more than sketches on napkins. "Do it," she encouraged over breakfast tapas. "I'll follow. We can base the European ops in Barcelona. Make it our city." Francesca's smile was radiant but laced with something unspoken. "Our city," she echoed, clinking her café con leche against Clara's. In February, they relocated. Clara leased a penthouse in the Eixample district, all modernist tiles and balconies dripping with bougainvillea, overlooking the Sagrada Familia spires piercing the sky like defiant prayers. The move was seamless, Clara's team handling logistics, Francesca packing her canvases with care. Their life settled into a rhythm, mornings tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, Clara reviewing contracts while Francesca daubed at her easel, evenings strolling La Rambla, hands linked against the pickpockets and tourists. Clara's solar project flourished, partnerships blooming with Catalan engineers who shared her vision of green grids snaking across the peninsula. She poured resources into it, millions from her personal holdings, secured by the unshakable faith that sustainability wasn't just business, it was legacy. Francesca's gallery deal solidified too, a solo exhibit slated for summer. To celebrate, Clara surprised her with a trip to the Costa Brava, rugged cliffs and hidden coves where the sea whispered secrets to the shore. There, in a whitewashed villa perched above the waves, they found a fragile peace. One dusk, as the sun bled orange into the Mediterranean, Francesca painted Clara en plein air, her brush capturing the wind in her hair, the salt on her skin. "You're my muse," she said, dabbing cerulean for the sea behind them. Clara laughed, pulling her into the surf. "And you're my storm." They splashed like children, then collapsed on the sand, bodies slick and spent. Lying there, Francesca's head on Clara's chest, she murmured, "What if this is forever?" Clara's heart swelled. It will be. But forever, Clara would learn, was a canvas easily torn. Spring unfurled in Barcelona like a flag of possibility. Francesca's exhibit preparations consumed her, late nights stretching canvas, sourcing frames from artisan shops in the Gothic Quarter. Clara supported from the sidelines, her own days filled with site visits to wind farms in Tarragona, where turbines spun like giants' arms against the horizon. One rainy afternoon, returning from a meeting soaked to the bone, Clara found Francesca at the kitchen island, laptop open to a real estate site. "Look," she said, excitement bubbling. "A studio loft in Gracia, perfect light, exposed beams. We could convert it for your office too. Make it home base for the expansion." Clara peered over her shoulder, the listing gleaming with high-res photos, terracotta floors, a terrace with views of Park Güell's mosaic dragons. The price tag, €850,000, made her blink, but it was a drop in her portfolio. "If it makes you happy," she said, kissing Francesca's temple. "It will. For us." Francesca's fingers flew over the keys, pulling up financing options. I have some savings, but a joint loan. Show we're in this together. Clara nodded, warmth spreading. Partnership, not patronage. She co-signed without a second thought, her financial advisor in San Francisco waving it through with a personal asset stamp. The closing was a blur of notaries and kava toasts. They moved in over a weekend, boxes mingling Clara's sleek tech gadgets with Francesca's chaotic art supplies. That night, christening the space, they danced to Nina Simone on a Bluetooth speaker, barefoot on the cool tiles, until exhaustion claimed them in a heap of limbs and laughter. But the undercurrent stirred. Clara's assistant flagged anomalies in the accounts, small transfers to an offshore entity tied to the property deed. Routine escrow, Clara dismissed, trusting the Spanish legalese. Francesca, meanwhile, grew distant during exhibit crunch, her phone buzzing with calls from suppliers she dismissed with a wave. In May, the gallery opening arrived like a thunderclap. The space, a converted warehouse in Elborn, thrummed with Barcelona's elite, designers in avant-garde silks, collectors nursing Rioja. Francesca's pieces dominated, massive abstracts of lovers entwined in storms of color, evoking passion's fury and fragility. Clara stood beside her, champagne flute in hand, beaming as critics murmured praise. You did it, Clara whispered during a lull, her arm around Francesca's waist. We did. But Francesca's smile faltered when a silver-haired woman approached, the gallerist, her eyes sharp as switchblades. Darling, the advance, it's cleared. But for the full commission. She trailed off, glancing at Clara. Francesca nodded tightly. Handled. Excuse us. Later, in the penthouse, wait, no, the new loft, Clara found her pacing. What's wrong? Nothing. Just. The show's costs ballooned. Frames, shipping. I need to cover the overrun. Clara pulled out her phone. How much? 200,000 euros. A bridge loan, until sales post. It was nothing, a rounding error in Clara's world. She initiated the transfer, fingers steady. Anything for you. Francesca's relief was palpable, her kiss fierce. I love you. More than art, more than air. Summer heat blanketed the city, turning the air thick with jasmine and unrest. Clara's project hit a snag, a permitting delay from local officials wary of Yankee overreach. She threw herself into lobbying, flying to Madrid for meetings, leaving Francesca to bask in post-exhibit glow. Sales trickled in, but not the flood promised. Whispers of a cooling art market reached Clara over tapas with expat friends. One sweltering night, returning early from a cancelled dinner, Clara overheard Francesca on the phone in the studio. Yes, the funds cleared. Phase 2 next week, tell them it's airtight. Her voice was clipped, professional, not the lover's lilt Clara knew. Who was that? Clara asked, stepping into the room, the door creaking like a warning. Francesca startled, pocketing her phone. A collector from Milan. Fussy about provenance. Clara nodded, unease coiling like smoke. But love, she reasoned, was trust's tightrope. She walked it blindly. By August, the requests escalated. A gallery expansion needing 500,000 euros for renovations. Then legal fees for a disputed canvas, another 300,000 euros. Clara obliged each time, her accounts dipping into reserves built from years of shrewd investments. Her advisor emailed cautions, diversify, Clara. This feels personal, not prudent, but she archived them, convinced it was temporary turbulence. Francesca, in turn, showered her with gestures, a custom solar-powered easel that charged via USB, weekends in Formentera where they snorkeled among seagrass meadows, hands linked underwater like vows. You're my anchor, she'd say, tracing constellations on Clara's skin. And Clara believed her, because belief was the oxygen of their air. The unraveling came on a September evening, the kind where the Sirocco wind carried Saharan dust, turning the sky to rust. Clara had wrapped a breakthrough, permits approved, groundbreaking in 2 months. She burst into the loft with takeout from their favorite paella spot, expecting Francesca's arms. Instead, silence. The studio was stripped, easels gone, canvases vanished. On the kitchen counter, a note in Francesca's looping script, "I'm sorry. It was never about the money. Or maybe it was. Forgive me if you can. F." Clara's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, the paper crumpling in her fist. Calls went to voicemail, texts echoed into void. By dawn, her team traced the transfers, funneled through shell companies to a woman named Sophia Ruiz, Francesca's cousin, it turned out, running a consulting firm in Lisbon that specialized in nothing legitimate. The scam crystallized in spreadsheets, the loft's deed forged, the loans siphoned, the exhibit a front for laundering. Over 2.5 million euros gone, not crippling to Clara's $150 million net worth, but a gutting nonetheless. Betrayal wasn't the theft, it was the intimacy weaponized. She didn't cry. Not then. Instead, she hired investigators, the kind who thrived on shadows. Barcelona's underbelly yielded crumbs, Francesca spotted in Seville, then vanished to Portugal. Clara's heart, that foolish engine, still pounded with questions. Why? Was any of it real? Months blurred. Clara shuttered the loft, returned to San Francisco in defeat. The solar project limped on, but her fire dimmed. Friends rallied, brunches in the Castro, therapy sessions probing the wound. "She played you," her best friend Mia said over margaritas. "But you're still whole." Clara nodded, but wholeness felt like a lie. Nights, she'd scroll old photos, Francesca's laugh frozen in pixels, their hands intertwined on Costa Brava sands. Love, as she learned, left echoes louder than absence. 2 years passed. Clara rebuilt, launched a queer-led VC fund for green tech startups, mentored young Latinos in STEM. Spain became a ghost, Barcelona a scar she poked at in quiet moments. At 35, she was sharper, steelier, but the softness Francesca had coaxed out lingered, a quiet rebellion. Then, the call came. Not from Francesca, from a lawyer in Madrid, voice clipped with urgency. "Señora Vargas. It's about Francesca Ruiz. She's dying. And she wants to see you." Clara's world tilted. Ovarian cancer, stage 4, diagnosed months ago, ravaging the woman who'd once danced through her life like flame. In a sterile hospital room overlooking the Tagus River, Lisbon's lights mocking the dimness within, Clara found her. Francesca was a wisp, cheeks hollowed, black hair cropped short under a silk scarf, but those eyes, those damn eyes, still held the sea's depth. Tubes snaked from her arms, monitors beeping a dirge. "You came," she rasped, voice a thread. Clara stood rigid, arms crossed like armor. "Why? After everything." Francesca's hand trembled toward her. "Sit. Please." Against every instinct, Clara did. The room smelled of antiseptic and regret. "It started small," Francesca began, words halting. "Debts from the gallery, real ones, at first. My cousin Sophia. She promised a way out. Loans from investors. I thought I could pay it back. With the exhibit, with us." Tears tracked her gaunt cheeks. "But you made it easy to want more. Not money, you." "I fell, Clara. Hard. That's why I ran. To protect you from the mess." Clara's throat burned. "You destroyed me." "I know." Francesca's gaze dropped. "The twist? It wasn't the scam. It was me, realizing too late that love isn't a canvas you steal. It's one you build, stroke by stroke." Silence stretched, broken only by the monitors. Clara searched her face, the woman who'd painted her soul, then torched it. "And now," Francesca reached into the bedside drawer, pulling a worn sketchpad. Flipping it open, page after page of Clara, not the millionaire, but the woman, laughing in rain, fierce in boardrooms, vulnerable in dawn light. I never stopped. Every cent went to treatment, eventually. But this is yours. My truth. Clara's fingers brushed the paper, charcoal smudges like old wounds. Why tell me now? Because you deserve the end of the story. Not fairy tale, real. I loved you. Still do. And I'm sorry. The dam broke then. Clara's tears fell, hot and unbidden, splashing the drawings. She took Francesca's hand, frail but warm. I hate you, she whispered. But God, I loved you too. In the days that followed, Clara stayed. Not for forgiveness, that came in fragments, over shared silences and smuggled empanadas. She read to Francesca from dog-eared novels, held her through fevers, watched the Tagus flow like time's indifferent witness. The investigators, she'd called off, the money, a ghost she released. Francesca slipped away on a crisp October morning, the sun gilding the room like a final brushstroke. Thank you, she breathed, eyes locking on Clara's. For seeing me. Clara buried her in Seville, under olive trees that whispered of beginnings. Back in San Francisco, she hung the sketchpad's pages in her office, a gallery of what was, framed in quiet grace. The fund thrived, powering homes across borders, a legacy of light from darkness. Years later, at a gala for queer artists in the Bay, Clara met Elena, Francesca's mother, aged but unbowed, clutching a letter from her daughter. She spoke of you always, Elena said, voice thick. Said you were her greatest work. Clara smiled, the twist settling like peace. Betrayal had scarred, but love. Love endured, humanistic and unbroken, a story etched not in theft, but in the courage to return. And in quiet nights, with the Golden Gate's fog rolling in, Clara painted her own abstracts, strokes of green for growth, blue for the sea they'd shared. Not perfect, but whole.